Hey everybody, how are you? This is Jeeves here. I'm your old composer here at the World Music Reaction and Review channel with my very first long form reaction on a single. Well, in the case of my rock and roll channel, my heavy metal channel, it's called The Slow Burn. Right now I'm calling this the OST campaign session. And what it is that I take, in this case, Halo, and I put out that suggestion, that call to action about a month ago, to give me all kinds of different ones to listen to, and gosh, you guys bombed me. So needless to say, I guarantee there's going to be some tracks that didn't make it on this, but that just means there's more of these to come. And what it is, it's about an hour long of me choosing. How many did I get in through? I think today we are doing 7 tracks from Halo. So it's going to be from Halo Reach, a few from ODST, 1 from Halo 4, 1 from Halo 5. If you have a favorite, take a look down at the chapters and you'll be able to see which ones I chose. I can't thank you guys enough for this journey. What a great way to end the year for me was to dive into OSTs and then just see the expansive, or hear the expansive depth of compositions of so many different composers, so many different styles, and God knows it looks like I have a hell of a journey ahead of me. So thank you all for taking me on this journey. All right, let's get going. Before I start, you guys know, you see the advertisement when it pops up. It doesn't monetize my channel, so if you want to support me, you find it worthy, just in case. If you want to buy me a cup of coffee, the link is down below. Check out the headsets I'm wearing, the link is down below. Also my Patreon. And also, I realize I forget to mention there's that little super heart thingy there on YouTube. You can kind of tip $2, $5 for a cup of coffee there too. So, all right, all that being said and done, let's do this. The very first track I'm listening to, this one's only 2 minutes and 45 seconds, so I'm going to let it run through before I say anything. But this one is from Halo Reach. This is Martin O'Donnell and Michael Salvatore, and the name of this track is Ashes. All right. I wonder if this was in gameplay. You guys tell me. It was a very emotional piece. You know, very light in its, what's the word I'm looking for? In its arrangement, but very poignant and pulling. And for me, that was really well done with that singular voice that really, you know, the essence of that performance is that this voice, I think Marty had mentioned something in the podcast I did with him about at times maybe he hadn't, I don't know if this was him, obviously, but there was a single voice. It kind of sounded falsetto. You can kind of hear a little bit of the catching up in the breathing to get into the notes and stuff that kind of gave you, purposefully or not, kind of gave you this kind of whimsical kind of exhaustion. It was just kind of bizarre. Not exhausted, like, I don't know if I want to hear this song. Just kind of this drained kind of thing, like catching up and being part of the emotion of that track. The fact that it was a single voice and it was heavily rinsed in like a long hall kind of reverb. And the piano, that very simple yet just it's like being on these tracks, on train tracks, very slow. They kind of kept you locked in a rhythm with what was being played on the piano and the patterns that were being played through that, while the melody obviously is what the voice was doing. Then as the strings came in, which is to me what I'm beginning to learn about the Halo composition, and you know, speaking to Marty and stuff like that, you know, the power of the strings and the emotion of it, that when the piano stepped into more chordal movements, that the strings actually followed it in unison. So there wasn't really any breakout arrangements that came around it, swam through it, but the lift and the power of the strings behind the chord changes really brought that whole kind of somber entrance of that meandering melody into complete play. And then as it came back down, you saw me go like this, and there was a couple of instances, I was like, what is that in the background right there? And kind of a harp vibe of sorts, just a couple of notes, little nuances just for texture, and then bringing us back down into the melody. But I was thinking to myself, where could this be in gameplay? I don't know. You guys tell me if this was a menu or part of the gameplay or where it was in the game. So that was a great way to start that. Just very nice and chill. So now, actually, I am going to be doing the epilogue from, let me see if I can, where is it? Here it is, right over here. Okay, so here's the epilogue from Halo Reach, and let's just get on it. All right. Sorry, I got to stop because that's what I do in this channel. I so love how in this first almost 3 minutes, the journey that both Marty and Michael pulled me on this. The piano, once again, this is going to be the signature, I believe, the signature style of composition throughout the Halo series, or at least the ones that were Michael and Martin, sorry, are composing, because I knew it stepped on beyond that as other composers moved into the system. But the essence has been set based around piano and strings and voices and stuff, and that's etched in. Remember, I did play one of the Halo games for a minute back in the early 2000s, I think the first one. So once the stuff gets etched in, and since the composers were kept on for a couple of games, there is a truth to the keeping the consistency of something. If it isn't broke, don't fix it kind of vibe and stuff. Yet the essence of an arrangement like this that pulls you in so many weird different directions. At the very beginning, the piano, once again, when I say the word simple, simple doesn't mean easy, you know, especially when it's purposeful, you know, because it's of the simplest types of composition that can pull just heavy emotions out of you. So this piano part that's being played, very nice, kind of lays this kind of like, it's kind of like you're in and out of a little tension with it because of how it's being played, using notes that are very close to each other. It doesn't quite give you a dissonant feeling, but it always leaves you reaching for kind of a resolution, like where are we going to come from? And then when there's a little predictability, even for myself going, I can tell where he's going, oh, he didn't go there. Well, that was really nice. But that middle section, or the section that I heard where it got all disjointed and very weird with the instruments and the vocals playing out of key, not out of tune, out of key, to give you this kind of like lost in a purgatory vibe. What was really super cool about that is that the bottom end, the strings, you know, the double bass or the cellos, still was maintaining an essence of the key that they started in. At least that's what it felt like with me. And then they gave us a second to cleanse the palette. I thought for a second maybe it was over. You saw me look over this way. And then they brought in this kind of soothing, kind of like emotion, this ambient, ethereal, soothing arrangement that's very light, but kind of makes it all okay. You know what I mean? To this point. Like you felt like you were brought to this place of purgatory, and then you're like, oh, all right, give me something to kind of glide on. Now, I still have a couple of minutes to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back a little bit, and I'll continue on. God, this was great. I really, really, really super love that. One of the things that I was just thinking about that is so, I don't know, so wonderful about this journey that I'm having here with the music, with the OSTs and everything, is that in in another world, I'm trying, how am I, coffee strong. How video games have been such a huge exposure to me as a composer to how much great music is out there in so many different styles. Yet to me, what's really more wonderful is that through the base of video games that players are getting exposed to such a broad spectrum of music. And the reason why I say that is that, you know, here through the Halo journey, at least what I've heard so far with the Martin and Michael team, are these beautiful expressive arrangements and compositions that are not bombastic and huge and ginormous like some of these other composers I'm listening to that's got these tremendous pieces that are being played. This to me is like this is a schooling in the power of harmony and tension and releases, you know, without a lot going on. And what I mean by that is like what I said earlier, the ability to, with the strings in a section, to have one of those notes that kind of make you feel like I'm not quite across the door, but I am, but which way I'm going to go until the composer decides to take you just by dropping or raising that one note. Just a little bit, a half step or a whole step or something, could take you down a darker, heavier feeling or let you off the hook. And that, to me, is what is masterful about what I'm hearing, you know, with this duo, with these composers, and how they approached Halo. So that's exactly what I just heard here. It's wonderful. You can see me, I'm kind of swinging in and out, but at the same token, once again, I got to go back to, there are times where I feel like I can predict, because composers, we have that weird little thing, and I know where this, and there's a surprise there. Or it may not be a resolution in, let's say, in the viola or something, they decide to let that slide off, and the resolution might come in the cellos or something. I don't know, something like that. Blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry, I just get all worked up for this. All right, so what are we doing next? Okay, now we're going to go into Halo 3 ODST. And the one that we're doing is Overture. I've got it all ready to go here. And once again, this is by Martin O'Donnell and Michael Salvatore. So let's do this. All right. Okay, this is a good place to stop real quick. It sounds like they're in a soundscape kind of vibe right now. Once again, keeping complete continuity with what it is that I've heard so far. I don't have to repeat myself on the beautiful arranging of the strings to pull these emotions out of us, using the same kind of techniques of release and tension and stuff to guide us through this. Visually, it must be something unbelievably wonderful to be watching against this. So I don't know what this is up against, so please let me know. It is an overture, which usually means that it's a kind of an over-under of all the little pieces of melodies that might be through, or motifs that might repeat itself through, any, like a film or something, if I remember correctly. What I love is when you write melodies for any one of the musicians in a reed section, clarinets, oboes, in that world. What I love, and I said this in another video who was it I was just listening to, where the lead, where the melody was with this lonely flute. And when you can hear the human breath passing through a flute, and you can hear the breathing. In the case of the same thing with the reed sections, especially the very intimate reed melodies, not only, you don't necessarily hear, because there isn't, like the flute, there's actually some air that will pass above as you're playing. I don't know why I did that Yankee Doodle kind of version. But with the reed, you are tight, your mouth is tight over a reed in most cases. I believe it's all cases. But you hear sometimes the valves that might click on and off. And that's something that just, it's such a subtle nuance, but it's so magical. And it really feels like it's a connection from whoever played that diaphragm and lungs all the way through, and when you get that connectivity. And that's a very beautiful thing about a reed instrument in a very intimate setting such as this. Okay, let's go back in. It looks like what they were doing now is more soundscape. Just if I mention the soundscape from now into the future, that means these are sonic textures that don't have necessarily any tone. They have value in the arrangement, but it could be, like for instance, opening up with the rain, except that wasn't soundscape in a sense, that was sound effects, but that didn't have any value, but it sets an emotion. So from now on, if I ever say soundscape, in this case, there sounds like there's some kind of ambient soundscape thing that's going on, and I'm just gonna shut up and hit go. Waiting for the big stop right there. Those are didn't sound like timpanis to me, but there's many different drums in the percussive section of an percussionist in an orchestra, and but that sounded like it. Now at this point, now this is the first time that I've heard a little bit more of the use of outside of the orchestra style uses of, like I said, soundscape. At the very end, there was that kind of panning back and forth, little loopiness going on in there, very subtle, but it was a very high thing going on. So okay, so now they're moving on, and this is the overture, I believe. Yeah, so this is at the beginning of this huge soundtrack here. So I'm sure that there's going to be some of these elements repeating through itself. I don't know if this was like the opening, setting up, building your armor kind of a thing, or if you're already on a mission on your first campaign. You guys let me know. When the strings started coming back in, and now we started having, what I would consider your signature bounciness of these, not arpeggiations, ostinatos kind of vibes, where there's patterns, and it's starting to grow and stuff. What I really liked was the subtle use as that came up, and then it kind of glassed out a little bit. Then we had the subtle uses of the pizzicato, which was those plucking things. You saw me doing this, bleep, bleep. And if you've ever, gone to an maybe seen classical music or anything, and you can do that all the way through in all the string instruments, bass players do it this way, and then cello and all that. That is a very important part, actually, to a lot of extremely powerful and very famous classical compositions. And I also like, there was, the subtle things. There's a little triangle that was, ding, that was coming through. But what I loved about the pizzicato section was at first I thought they were messing around with me in time. Like maybe was it a triplet or something, and I had to sink into this and what's going on. This is the beauty about live music, is that the playing of the strings, the lower strings that were behind it, that's why pizzicato is it's very pop, pop, pop. So rhythmically everything hits very tight. Whereas unless you tell the string section to play a particular way, even if they're playing on time, just by the millisecond and difference in time between the bow against the string resonating the sound and it coming out, it sounds like there was a lag there. So I'm going, wow, are they doing a triplet thing? And then I realized, no, this is just the organic texture of what's happening during that performance. And then of course it broke into more of this percussive, ending and everything that we had there. So that was really super cool. And like I said, now for me, what's really cool is that now it seems like I might be venturing into a little bit more of a progressive use of different kinds of composition, soundscapes and stuff. So I guess we'll find out. Next up, still from the ODST Halo 3, this one is called Difference for Darkness. So let me go ahead and look that up. By the way, once again, I just do want to chime in and say thank you guys for hanging out, leaving the comments, filling me in on where these tracks are playing against the game, and what your personal thoughts are about the music, or anything that I'm saying. That's what this is all about. All right, guys, so let's do this. This is from ODST Halo 3, Difference for Darkness by Marty O'Donnell and Michael Salvatore. All right. Okay, another powerfully moving track here, but there's something really cool about what's happening here. 85% of the arrangements that we're hearing behind there, except for like that beautiful opening with the lead, with the flute, what we've already established is, the signature style of what we're hearing from both these composers, is that this particular passage is very heavy in what is called unison arrangement to the piano. So everything that you're hearing, and the melody, even the melody that's being played, is actually being played by the piano in its whole, right? You got this many fingers. You got 10 fingers, but you actually have the possibility of playing up to 13 and 14 notes, depending on, there are little tricks on holding down 2, with your thumb and stuff. But it is such, with the intervals that are being played there, what happens is if you listen to even that that's going on in the bottom, very lightly, the piano is playing that. The melody, after the flute came in unison by itself, and then it came in, all of a sudden that melody was being played by the piano, the flute, and a first section string, or a violin, let's say. But still here, this small little ostinato was being played with the left hand. What I love about this is that if you arrange the string sections in a unique way, and you're actually doubling what's being played here, you leave yourself open for other beautiful, subtle little arrangements, and that's what was happening. So in between this layering of what was happening to the piano, though it does sound that way to me, I could be wrong. I'm wrong a lot of times. You can go ahead and come for me in the comments or smoke me in the comments. I'm used to it already. Is that by doing that, then you can have these subtle single lines coming in across and meander through that. Just like what we just heard right before this little section. I think it was a viola or a first string section or something like that, or a second. I don't know if there was any divisi going on. It doesn't sound like it was big enough for that, but there was this beautiful line that kind of weaved through this. So the richness of it, when it was all in with the piano and the strings and a couple of the solo reeds that were in there, or the flute, there's these little arrangements that come gliding through that. And that's a really great technique to use, is that when the piano is the power play, if you would, and everything is following below it, and then you give it space for all these other things to happen. In this case, it's the subtleness of what Michael and Martin do that is incredibly powerful, and they're masters at it. Okay, there's still obviously more to go because it just kind of faded out, but I think I just cut it off before I get into this section. Okay, so that's completely different than anything I've ever heard so far in my Halo journey. All right, so now maybe in the ODST journey, things change in energy. I remember Marty was telling me in his podcast how as things started to progress with the relationship and stuff, that he was coming to bat with new ideas and stuff, and you know, having to kind of maneuver or massage these ideas through the EMT level or whatever, that this will work or whatever. And I don't know if this was one of those cases, but there's definitely this big shift now with that whole digital pattern that just went on there. What's really super cool about that, so you do have these percussive things that are happening, and some of them have unique reverbs on it, but those reverbs are not muddying out the experience from left to right. That's stereo, right? You know, hard left, hard right vibe. And here's the fun thing. So you have these percussive things that are happening in different tones. Some of them sound like they're kind of muted, you know, kind of, wow, that was a banger. Some of them sounded kind of muted and in the center and stuff like that. Here was the magic for me on this. That bass line, if you go back and listen to that section, listen to that bass line has a bouncy delay going left to right. And it's also programmed in a way where it becomes part of the percussive arrangement. So if you're a producer or an engineer or a musician, you know what I'm talking about. But for those of us who just listen to the music and just are enjoying that experience, so a delay can go pa 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 pa, so pa pa pa, or pa depending on how you program that delay. Then you take that delay and pan the experience left and right. So now it goes pa, 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 you know what I'm saying? So if the musician or the composer is doing something unique and then they add a different kind of rhythmical arrangement in the post effect, which is delay, you get that bounciness. So go back and listen to that. That was badass. That was really super cool. So in the video game, this must be a kind of a tailing off of a menu or the end of a campaign or something like that. So that was a lot of soundscape, but it did have some tonal value. And what I mean by that is, let me touch on that before we go on to the next track, is that just because that somebody uses a composer, sorry, I'm doing two things at once here, but a composer uses those soundscapes that I explained earlier, a metallic, swirling, zingy sound. However, if you subtly add a drone note behind it, or something like a 1/5 kind of a drone that kind of gives you kind of a Middle Eastern kind of vibe or something. It doesn't even have to be one note. It could be a series of notes, but you pull it way, way, way in the back. That gives you your senses the idea that there's actually a note attached to that. You know, it's a very well used technique in film scoring, that like stuff that I've done, same thing. But I really love that. But anyhow, let's just go ahead and move on. But I go back and listen to that part of the bass. I thought that was pretty cool. So let's go to the next one. Okay, this is the last one from the ODST journey here from Halo 3. And this one is called Traffic Jam. So let me find it. Stand by. Oh, cool. It's right here. All right. So once again, from Martin O'Donnell and Michael Salvatore from the ODST, one of many that I know I'll have to go back and listen to again and do another show because there's so much music here. This one is Traffic Jam. All right. I gotta find some place to stop this. Are you kidding me? Now you're really shooting a Roman candle up in the air for me with this track, because I mean, my original channel that I have over 250,000 subs to is heavy metal. Now, this is not heavy metal, but I definitely wasn't expecting, you know, a pattern rhythm beat with that kind of, come on, let's say it, kind of that cashmere vibe, right? Obviously not the thickness and the richness of it and everything like that, but it definitely caught me off guard. At the very beginning, opening up with the little string pattern that started, very subtle, there was this really high, crispy, it wasn't soundscape, but it was one of those kind of, I don't know how you call it, evolving kind of synth sounds that had kind of a very bright, tingy bell thing that kind of got you in the back of the ear, like going, wow, that's kind of a trip. Like the hybrid use of that to give you a little bit of like kind of a, but while these strings in the bottom are very subtly gliding you into some part of a journey. Then what happens is, still using the same composition techniques of these long notes that take you through these suspended journeys and stuff. By doing that with the brass section, the lower brass section, it's an ominous, heavy, hardship kind of vibe. like, you know, you're trudging through it and stuff, and you're just trying to get to the next thing, but in kind of a somber, you know, going for all the strength that you can without powering strength into the arrangement, right? So it was heavy. It still moved forward, but then what they did is it sounded like they used the same pattern they established with the violins, and then brought it into the horns, and then added their own techniques within the horns, because each group of instruments also have to be arranged differently depending on the tuning, and also the strengths and the weaknesses of different instruments. A whole different thing. And I don't mean strength and weaknesses. You guys know what I'm talking about, musicians. I'm talking about, you know, where the most power and soul of each instrument in the orchestra has their own little sweet spot. At least that's the way I feel. So now all of a sudden we get into that dun, 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 dun. They didn't quite do the Kashmir thing, but that definitely was the energy. But it's subtle in the sense that it's not a big, bold, hardcore left and right, you know, blast into it. So the drums come in and the guitar come in. Now the drums for me, I'm having to kind of like marinate on this for a little bit. So as the drums come in and the guitar comes in, I believe this is the one with Steve Vai. Is it not? I don't know. You guys tell me, because everybody's saying, oh, you got to listen to Steve Vai if you like metal. He's in one of these Halo games. One thing that caught me off guard was that lead guitar work, I don't know if it's me, but it's slightly on this side. I would have loved to have heard it in the middle, but that's neither here or there. I was just kind of like, is my ear, I almost had to kind of go do this. The crispiness and the tone of that guitar too is very gritty and edgy, and I really like that decision. And the drums were not overly produced. That's something very unique, especially with today's day and age. On the heavy metal channel, when I listen to these bands of the last 15 years with their incredible engineering techniques and stuff, sometimes you hear this incredibly compressed, separate, powerful kind of, you know, drum tones, where they kept this more organic and fresh, you know. So the drums in of itself, with the space that it has inside this arrangement, I could feel it breathing a little bit. Kind of like they put a drum set right here in front of us and let's go. Okay, so this is great. I love this. I definitely wasn't ready for this. There it is. Did you hear this little, the little, I don't want to say twinkling at the top, but that's what I was talking about. I thought it was really cool. You know, one of the things I do want to mention, though, about this, and, you know, very rarely do I ever, you know, say anything that's not 100% always super positive kind of a thing. This isn't definitely a slam whatsoever. It sounded like Steve, like it was a one pass. You know, all the lead that's, if that is Steve, forgive me, if it's not and you're the guitar player, set me straight in the comments. It sounded like it was a one pass, or maybe they had multiple passes to choose from. And it also sounded like, and once again, this is not a, you know, I'm not giving anybody the people's elbow for this. It sounded like it was non-rock and roll engineering, that was engineering this, to me, that kind of made it actually work. And you have to kind of hear how I'm saying this. If you would have taken rock engineers and dropped them in just for the drums and the guitar and not have any familiarity with live orchestral works or what it is that they were doing, you get these different kinds of sounds and mixes. Almost some of it feels like it might be a little forced or doesn't quite fit in the tonescape. And there were a couple times where I kind of leaned into like that kind of, but then that for me is only a me thing. It's a personal thing that where I felt a couple times where I felt like, but that's because I'm listening to it at this capacity. It has nothing to do with the composers. It has nothing to do with the engineer. It has nothing to do with whoever played guitar. It was just the one time that I felt a little, but that's just me in my ears and how I'm doing what I'm doing. I just try to be authentic here. You know, I'm not blowing smoke up anybody's ass for any reason. I'm not sponsored to say things. I'm just sharing with you a little bit of what I felt with that. There was parts of it where I felt like, since it was a unique introduction to me, the drums and the guitar out of this whole Halo journey, I think for me, the only thing that I felt was like, God, it works, but it's unique. And it's unique, you know. It's not. It didn't make me jump through my socks. Oh my God, this is a new elevation of like where Halo needs to go now, more metal and more of that sound. It was just kind of a bit of a shift for me. So I'm assuming that the rest of this probably has a lot more of it, and as the journey goes through, it builds more and more. So that's where I'm leveraging that particular opinion, if there's such a thing as saying that. All right, so let's get on to. What did I just do? How's about if we do from Halo 4? Now we have a different composer. This one is called 117 or 117 or 117, I don't know what it's called. And this is by the composer Neil Davidge, if I pronounced the name right. So I'm excited. Let's listen to a different composer and let's see how if they keep the integrity of the theme moving forward that Martin and Michael established. So let's do this. All right. Got to find a place to stop sometime. So now what we're hearing, here's the thing I want to bring up about this. So I think without a doubt Neil's paying homage to what has already been set before him as a template in arrangements and composition. We're hearing that kind of carry itself through. Now there's nothing from the other melodies that I hear happening here, but this is one track, and however long of a soundtrack this is, I have no idea, and I'm very sure that somewhere along the lines that there is. But here's what I want to bring up about this. Two things. Now I don't know how many years difference between this is Halo 4 and then the original one. Now we're talking about composition and engineering and technical differences that happen as the years move on. I do this on my heavy metal channel when I talk about, let's say, a band like Slipknot or Clutch or any of these bands that have started, their legacy bands. They continue to release music, and you can hear through the trajectory of their journey that the engineering techniques change, the sounds change, whether they're using amps or amp modelers or whatever the case is. In this case now, this arrangement sounds really, really huge, and it could be for multiple reasons. One of the things that is unique about this is hearing that sequence percussive pattern that's going in the background. And then there's one that just kind of sizzled off. I was like, RMX. And those of you who know. And I was going, that sounded kind of familiar, let's say. And it happens to a lot of composers and arrangers will find sounds and samples. I'm not saying that's what's happening here, but what you do is we modify it or change it or use it as an influence and build our own styles and stuff. And one of the unique things is that the timing of that beautiful, really great, deep percussive arrangement that's going on, and the timing of the musicians is perfect, and it's breathable. And what I mean by that is a lot of times composers will actually add live music to what's called stems. So let's say they did the arrangement here, and then they just bring a little bit of that into the mix later. So now they did the arrangements here. Now they've got it all charted out and for an orchestra. Now the orchestra is going to play it live. And sometimes you'll merge the two a little bit. Sometimes you'll like the little bit of the attack of this. And this is what might be going on here, because the complexity in tempo against that pattern has got to be spot on and tight. And that's what's going on here. It's fantastic. It sounds great, it sounds authentic, it sounds real, it sounds unforced, and the arrangements are great. God, what a great integration of, well, I call it hybrid composition in the sense that using non-human, like an orchestra, for percussion, for ambience and ethereal sounds, and it adds such a different. Hang on, let me save this. Standby. There we go. It adds such a different vibe to it. So powerful, and it's it's a stark difference than the original Halo sound. Because, like I said early on, it's because there's been a change in how approaching moving forward with the style of composition. A lot of the work is still. What's wonderful about what Mr. Davidge did, what Neil did, the composer, is that there are original elements from the original Halo in there, but they're not in the obvious, and it's not like it's the melody, but the bottom, like for instance, this last section, the bottom changes where boom, 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 were along the same lines as the same structure that supported the melody from the original Halos. That's what it feels like to me. So, and then of course you have still vocals that are happening, kind of, a choir vibe in the back. So keeping some of these elements in there while introducing a new type of arrangement, a composer with his own creative styles and desires to do things to still keep, the integrity of the original, yet be able to put his own brush strokes, if you would, on this. I loved his hybrid use of all of the percussive elements that were non-orchestral on here. I thought were fantastic. And it also, like I said, it raised, not raised in the sense that it makes it better. It changed the scope of power. And that could be what the producers and what they've decided to do, because the early Halo seems to have been more emotional pulling on a lot of stuff. Until the one I just heard with earlier with the ODST when it was Steve Vai, and maybe there's other ones too. I know that there are some other musicians that also contributed to the journey with Marty, from what he said to me on the podcast, that were outside of the circle of the two of them. But I think it was Paul McCartney and something else. But anyhow, that being said, when I say it lifts this, it's like now it's that new unabashed power that technology and fusing these elements together can bring to an arrangement, and this was just absolutely wonderful. But and what I loved about it is that I could tell and I could feel that he was really being mindful of what laid before him, and to bring that across and to keep the integrity of it still moving forward. It's just the way I feel about it. All right, guys, if you could believe this is the last track. I'm sure. I don't know necessarily that, I don't know who's still here. Obviously, if you are here, still type in, I'm still here. Also, I'm sure you guys are already commenting on things that I've been saying. And so it's been a great journey. Thank you so much for the cups of coffee and everything you guys have been sending me. Let's get on to this last track. This one now is from Halo 5 and another composer. And this composer's name is Kazuma Jinochi? Kazuma Jinochi. Forgive me if I get it wrong. Please figure out a way to tell me the right way to pronounce the last name in the comments. This one is from Halo 5, and the name of this track is The Trials. All right. Gotta stop somewhere. I'm gonna just say one thing. This has got to be such an amazing feeling for Martin and Michael to have, to this measure, their melodies so incredibly well arranged and produced. It's like, you know, it's like somebody covering your song. This was so powerful. I think anybody from like the original Halos that like the music and stuff like this is probably one of the most wonderfully glorious rearrangements of melody and the way that this composer Kazuma put this together, because the elements are all there. I feel like this is like the perfect end for this show. I'm going to continue on, but I love the feeling that I got. It's like, and also, did you see me doing this with the piano? I was like, yeah, I love that. That's an old school style from one of my dad's old friends from way back in the day, Lalo Schifrin, the Mission Impossible style of making sure that bottom end of the piano goes boom, 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 and you can really feel that. It really sets that deep pace in your soul. But this is great. This could not have been a better ending for my show that I could have ever predicted, was to have this. It was just absolutely mind-numbing, and I loved every bit of it. It was pure, powerful. It was a wonderful composition where obviously the composer did add elements of different kind of dynamics by virtue of having a large, powerful orchestra playing this. That's what happened here. What I found that was so fantastic about it, it was that a complete expression of all the melodies and the sub-little melodies and arrangements that we all got used to hearing from the original Halo was represented here in in different points. The only thing that I was going, where's the gong? Where's the gong? Is I was going, oh, well, he didn't want to put a gong there, but that's one of the things I used to remember, you know, from when I played the very first game. An amazing job that this composer, Kazuma Jinochi, did on this. And like I said, I couldn't have ended this show any better way. So it was just fantastic. And to finish off with a live, large orchestration of a performance of a legacy legendary piece of music from the video game Halo, perfect. You guys, if you're still here, you're amazing me. This is the longest one of these I've ever done. And I'm done with my coffee. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for your comments, for sharing, liking, disliking. If you smoke me in the comments about things that I say, you come for me. That's all right. It's just all about me putting my energy out there and just trying to be a kid again. That's what's happening in my world right now, and that's why I do what I do here. Thank you so much for your support. The links for the cup of coffee or the little super thanks on the YouTube button there with the heart, all of that helps me out quite a bit, as you can imagine, obviously. And that's my story I'm sticking to. You guys take care of yourself. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. I look forward to your comments. All right, see ya.